How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Samach Vav, Daf 66 of Masech Nedarim. Friends, today we talk about Pesach, how to undo Nedarim. Starting on top of Daf Samach Vav Maralf, says the Mishnah, Posum b'Yom Tovim Shabbosos. You can use Shabbos and Yom Tov as a Pesach, right? So if a fellow says he's not going to drink any wine, and they're going to say to him, well, did you realize that you're not going to be able to drink wine on Shabbos and Yom Tov? And he says, wow, no, I didn't realize. Well, then you can use that as a Pesach. Initially, they would understand this to mean so initially they understood this to mean, okay, so when they said to him, did you realize that you wouldn't be able to drink wine on Shabbos and Yom Tov? He says, no, I didn't realize that. I wouldn't have made the neder. So that means that only on Shabbos and Yom Tov he would be allowed to drink wine, right? Meaning, right? I didn't realize that. I didn't have in mind essentially Shabbos and Yom Tov. Torah Bakiva came v'limed and he taught she'aneder shuter michlalo huter kulo. That no, once a neder is permitted to any extent, so then it's entirely permitted. And therefore, when he says that he didn't realize that it would apply to Shabbos and Yom Tov as well, well then we nullify the entire vow. Ketzad. So the fellow says that I'm not going to get any benefit from all of yous. Well, if you can make a heter for one of them, then we have a heter for all of them, right? We saw a few weeks ago, right? If he says that, hey, nobody's allowed to eat these figs, and then it turns out his father and his brother are there, so then, they'd be allowed to eat the figs. It was that whole shaila there. Kulan. So if once one of them becomes permitted, all of them become permitted. But in a case where they made them dependent on one another, like you're usher and you're usher like the previous guy's usher, etc. Well, then if he only allows the last person, then just the last person is permitted, but not the others. But if he permits the first person, so that did I say that? Right? Wait, what just happened? I skipped. If he says, I'm not going to get benefit from this guy and this guy, so if the first guy becomes mutter, then all of them become mutter. If the last person becomes mutter, then only the last person is mutter, all of the rest of them are usher. So for example, if he says that, you're usher, and you're usher like that guy's usher, and that guy's usher like the previous guy's usher, well then if the first guy becomes mutter, then all of them become mutter, because they're all dependent on each other. But if the last guy becomes mutter, then it's only the last guy who becomes mutter. That I owe this guy a korban, and that guy a korban, you'd have to make separate. You'd have to get separate pesachs for each one because they're considered like separate nedarim. I'm sorry, basically makes a kohen, right? He says I'm not going to get benefit from this guy like a korban and that guy like a korban, and he makes the korban distinction for each one. So then you need separate. They're considered like separate nedarim, and you need a separate pesach, pesach for each one. If a fellow says, he read online somewhere that wine is bad for your intestines, so he says, I'm not having any wine because wine is bad for your intestines. They said to him, but they said, what do you mean? Well, old wine is taka givaldik for the intestines. Well, okay, well then he'd be allowed to drink old wine because that's actually good for the intestines. And it's not only the old wine that would be permitted, you'd be allowed to have all wine, right? Like Rabbi Akiva says, once it becomes permitted somewhat, it becomes permitted entirely. If he says, I'm not going to eat an onion, onions are bad for your heart. They said to him, they said, but kufri onions are good for the heart. So he would be allowed to have kufri onions, not just kufri onions, but all of the onions. The taka happened one time. Rabbi Meir says you can eat all the onions. You hear that? Right? A fellow says, I'm not going to eat onions because they're bad for the heart. And then it turns out that one kind of onion is taka good for the heart. So there goes the neder. You can eat all onions. Says the Gemara, fine, mantana. So who's the one that he says that specifically when he says, a korban for each one, so then it would be, you need separate pesachs. But otherwise, if he says loze veloze, so then you wouldn't need, it's only because he's specified a korban that you need separate pesachs, but otherwise you wouldn't. So Reb Shimon the Amar ad sheyomar shvua l'chol echad ve'echad. It's like Reb Shimon who says in a different context in shvua, so you'd have to say specifically a shvua for each one, but otherwise it would just, you would only need one atara for all of them. Fine. So he said if he says that he's not going to have any wine because wine is bad for the intestines, and it turns out old wine is good for the intestines, but typically the ain ra. Why does it have to be that old wine is good for the intestines? It should be enough to say that it's not bad for the intestines, right? He said that I'm not going to drink wine because wine's bad for the intestines. If we say old wine isn't bad for the intestines, well then that's already proving it wrong. Why does it we have to say that it's good for the intestines? That seems like more than we need. It's saying, and additionally, not only is it not bad, it's taka good. If he says he's not going to eat onions because onions are bad for the heart, so if it so the same thing with the onions, right? It should be enough just to say that they're not bad for the heart, right? But we say that they're taka good for the heart, these kufri onions. So we're saying, yeah, not only is it not bad for the heart, they're taka oichid good for the heart. Says the Mishnah, that you can use as a Pesach, as an opening to a vow, his own honor or the honor of his children. They say to the fellow, if you would know that they're going to be saying about you, who's going to be saying about him? Who? Tell me who. The yentis in the bungalow on Shabbos, in the bungalow colony on Shabbos afternoon. Kachi vesto shaploni. This guy, that's his habit. Megarish is noshav, that he divorces his wife. You omen, they're going to say about the daughters, the daughters of somebody who's divorced. Why did their mother get divorced? And he says, wow, if I knew that it would be the talk of the town, that the yentis in the bungalow colony on Shabbos afternoon would be saying, how come he got divorced? What's wrong with him? What about the family? And it would be a whole mess. So he says, no, you don't mess with the yentis in the bungalow colony on Shabbos afternoon. It's easier to just avoid that. And he says, I wouldn't have made the vow. Kodem shani nose as plonis kiura. He says, I'm not marrying so-and-so. She's terribly unattractive. It turns out she's actually very beautiful. She's very, very dark. Turns out she's very light. She's very short. Turns out that she's very long. Mutter, but so he's allowed to marry her. No, it's not because there's no lot. It's not like she was unattractive and she became attractive. She was dark and she became light. She was short and became long. Ella, it was partially a mistake, right? He thought she was short. Turns out that she's tall. Now there's a story that a certain fellow who made a vow that he wasn't going to get any benefit from his niece. They took the niece to Rabbi Shmuel's house, and they made her very beautiful. Omar lo Rabbi Shmuel, and Rabbi Shmuel then said to the fellow, Beni, mizona darta, you made a neder that you are not going to have any benefit and not marry this beautiful niece of yours. Omar lo, and the fellow says, Lav, no, I did not make a neder from her. Wow, she's very, very beautiful. Beitira, and Rabbi Shmuel said, okay, well, you can get married. He made a Pesach, used it as a Pesach to be matir the neder. Rabbi Shmuel, but also Beitira Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel said that she's permitted. Rabbi Shmuel, at that point, Rabbi Shmuel cried for Omer, and he says, Bnos Yisrael know, saying that the daughters of Israel are very beautiful, but the poverty makes them unattractive. And when Rabbi Shmuel passed away, the daughters of Israel were wailing, and they said, Bnos Yisrael, Rabbi Shmuel Bachino, that the daughters of Israel shall cry for Rabbi Shmuel. And it's similarly, it says by Shaul that the daughters of Israel shall cry for Shaul. Says the Gemara, Maisa, this story, I don't understand. The Maisa, the anecdote, is disproving what the Mishnah had said. The Mishnah had said that, when he says he thought that she was short, it turns out that she's tall. We're saying it's not that she was short and became tall, it was simply a mistake. But then we bring a Maisa with Rabbi Shmuel that she was unattractive and he made her attractive. So on the one hand we're saying that Nola doesn't work, on the other hand we're bringing an anecdote with Rabbi Shmuel where it was Nola, he made her beautiful. So the Mishnah is missing a few words, and this is what it's really saying. Rabbi Shmuel says to Rabbi Shmuel, Afilu Even, he disagrees with the Tanakama. He says, punkt verkehrt. He says, even if she was unattractive and became attractive, shchor v'naisa, the savannah was dark and became light, ketzar v'naisa sarucha, she was short and became tall, then even in that case, it would be when it's nolad, it would be a proper Pesach. Maisa, there was a Maisa be'echad shenodim basachoso, that a fellow made a neder that he wasn't going to get any benefit from his niece and certainly not marry her. V'chnisu Rabbi Yishmael v'yipua v'chulei, and they brought it to Rabbi Yishmael and he made her beautiful, and then he used that as a Pesach to the neder. Tana shein totev salah, she was missing a tooth. V'asala Rabbi Yishmael shein shalzav, and Rabbi Yishmael made her a beautiful golden tooth, mishalo, from his own money. Kishachiv, Rabbi Yishmael, when Rabbi Yishmael passed away, Pasach Olei Ahu Safdana, a eulogizer said, Hachi, the following, B'nos Yisrael, Rabbi Yishmael Bachina, daughters of Israel, cry for Rabbi Yishmael Hamabishchen v'chulei, who clothes you with golden teeth. How the Amarla, the Divisu, a fellow said to his wife, Konum she'i at nenes li, fellow says to his wife, you're not going to get any benefit from me ad until shetat imi tavshilech l'Rabbi Yehuda l'Rabbi Shimon, until you bring your food to Rabbi Shmuel and to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon and have them taste your food. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda time, Rabbi Yehuda tasted the food. Omar kavachomer, he made the certain logical thinking. Umalasa shalom ben ish leishto, that to make peace between a man and a wife, a husband and wife, Amar Torah, the Torah says, Shmishanichtav b'kedusha, that my holy name, Yimacha al-mayim ha-ma'arim b'safik, should be erased in the bitter waters of the Sota, and we don't even know. It's in order to tell, did she have a relationship with somebody else or not? Va'ani, and me, alachas kama v'chama, certainly, my own, honor or whatever, I can waive in order to keep these people married. Rabbi Shimon lo time. So Rabbi Shimon said, no way, no how, I ain't tasting the food. Let all the kids die let all the kids die. I ain't going nowhere. Because he didn't want, he didn't want people to be getting into situations of Nedarim where people are making Nedarim, and then he says, I have nothing to do with this. These people made Nedars. They have to deal with it. You want to make a point that nobody's making Nedarim and he's not assisting people getting out of them. How do Amr L'Divisu, a fellow said to his wife, Konam she'i atnenis li ad shetaruki bab Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Fellow says to his wife, you're not getting any benefit from me until you spit on Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Oy va voy. Also zvirakak alavushe. She went, she spat on his clothing. Amr Ravachim Yidifti Ravina, says Ravachim Yidifti to Ravina, v'ha, hai leziluso kamichavin. Ravachim Yidifti says to Ravina, but she didn't spit on him, she spat on his clothing. Amle merik al monei to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel zilusa rabosa he, to which Ravina says, yeah, I know, but spitting on Reb Shimon ben Gamliel's clothing is pretty disgraceful, and so I guess she did what she was set out to do. How the Amrullah L'Divisu, a fellow said to his wife, Kodem she atnenes li, you won't get any benefit from me, achetiri mum sheba yafe shebich ma'um yafe shebich l'Rabbi Shmuel bar Yossi. Fellow says to his wife, you're not getting any benefit from me until you show something beautiful of yourself to Rabbi Shmuel bar Yossi. Amar loim. Rabbi Shmuel bar Yossi wanted to allow her to get benefit from her husband, so he was like trying to figure out, okay, how could we consider it like she's showed something of herself that's beautiful to me? Shema Roshana, maybe her head's beautiful. They said to him, no, not beautiful, skagel, it's too round. Shema Sirena, okay, well, maybe she's got beautiful hair. Domalanite Pishta, nope, it's like stalks of flax. Shema Enel nose, maybe she's got beautiful eyes. True to say, nope, they're like too round. Shema Oznel nose, maybe she's got beautiful ears. Foolish say, no, they're like doubled in a bad way. Shema Chotmana, maybe she's got a beautiful nose. Balamu, no, it's like not beautiful. Shema Sifsosenos, maybe she's got beautiful lips. Avo say, no, they're too thick. Shema Tzaivarina, maybe she's got a beautiful neck. Shakutu, no, it's a very short neck. Shema Kreisana, maybe she's got a beautiful stomach. Tzavahu, no, it's bloated. Shema Ragleanos, maybe she's got nice legs. Nice feet. No, they're wide like the feet of geese. Shema Shmana, maybe she's got a beautiful name. The Chluch is Shma. Her name is Dirty. That's her name. Her name is Dirty. Well, That sounds like a valid name. She seems pretty ugly. She's dirty with mums. And they said, well, okay, I guess her name is something that seems proper. So that seems to be enough. I know her name, and her name seems to be befitting, and therefore the husband and wife can get benefit from one another. However, Bavel, there was a fellow from Babylon, the Solik le Arad Yisrael, who made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, Mazel Tov. Nosavitza, and he married a woman in Eretz Yisrael, Amrla, and he says to her, Bashili li trei talfe, cook for me 2 lentils. Bashili li trei talfe. So she took that literally, and she cooked for him 2 lentils. Rosach Allah, he got very upset. He's like, did you really think I meant just literally 2 lentils? So he said to her, tomorrow, Bashili griva, cook me a griva, a large measure. Bashili griva. So she cooked for him a large measure, like a really, really, really large measure of lentils. Amarla zili aisili tre butzine, and he was flabbergasted. He said, bring for me 2 melons. Ozas va'aisele tre shage. She brought for him 2 candles, because like a melon is like, right, butzina, right, is a melon, but it's also light. Amarla zili tavri yasan al resha de bava, and he says, go and break them on the bava, on the doorpost. But have Yosef bava ben buta above it. But guess who was there? A fellow named Bava ben Buta, v'kadoin dino, and he was judging some kind of a judgment. Ozlas v'tavas yaun al reshe, and she went and broke the candles on his head. Oh my Lord! And Bava ben Buta said to her, Mahadein, what was that for? The avadat that you did. Amrle, she said to him, Kachzi vani baili. That's what my husband told me to do. He told me to break these things on your head. What do you want me to do? Amar, he said, okay. In that case, you did what your husband wanted. The Eibishter birthed from you 2 sons like Bave ben Bute, Hadron Oloch, Rabbi Eliezer. We'll come back to Rabbi Eliezer. What a beautiful story. Friends, that was Daf Samach Vav Masechet Nedarim. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.